If he were not a criminal, we should not have handed him over to you.
Pilate said.
Take him yourselves and try him by your own law.
The Jews answered,
We are not allowed to put a man to death.
This was to fulfill the words Jesus had spoken, indicating the way he was going to die. So Pilate went back into the praetorium and called Jesus to himself and asked him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
Jesus replied,
Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say it to you about me?
Pilate answered,
Am I a Jew? Is it not your own people and the chief priests who have handed you over to me? What have you done?
Jesus replied,
My kingship is not of this world. If my kingship were of this world, my servant will fight, that I may not be handed over to the Jews. But my kingship is not from the world.
Pilate said.
So you are a king then?
Jesus answered,
You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice.
Pilate said,
Truth? What is that?
And with that, he went again to the Jews and said,
I find no case against him. But according to a custom of yours, I should release one prisoner at the Passover. Would you like me then to release the king of the Jews?
At this, they shouted.
Not this man, but Barabbas.
Barabbas was a brigand. Pilate then had Jesus taken away and scourged. And after this, the soldiers twisted some thorns into a crown and put it on his head and dressed him in a purple robe. They kept coming up to him and saying,
Hail, King of the Jews.
And they slapped him in the face. Pilate came outside again and said to them,
Look, I am going to bring him out to you, to let you see that I find no case.
Jesus then came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said,
Here is the man.
When they saw him, the chief priests and the guards shouted.
Crucify him, crucify him.
Pilate said,
Take him yourselves and crucify him. I can find no case against him.
The Jews replied,
We have a law, and according to the law, he ought to die, because he has claimed to be the Son of God.
When Pilate heard them say this, his fears increased. Re-entering the praetorium, he said to Jesus,
Where do you come from?
But Jesus made no answer. Pilate then said to him,
Are you refusing to speak to me? Surely, you know I have power to release you, and I have power to crucify you.
Jesus replied,
You have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me to you has the greater sin.
From that moment, Pilate was anxious to set him free, but the Jews shouted,
If you set him free, you are no friend of Caesar's. Anyone who makes himself king is defying Caesar.
Hearing these words, Pilate had Jesus brought out and seated him on the chair of judgment at a place called the Pavement, in Hebrew, Gabbatha. It was Passover preparation day about the 6th hour. Pilate said to the Jews,
Here is your king.
They said,
Take him away, crucify him.
Pilate said,
Do you want me to crucify your king?
The chief priest answered,
We have no king except Caesar.
So in the end, Pilate handed him over to be crucified. They then took charge of Jesus, and carrying his own cross, he went out of the city to a place of skull, or as it is called in Hebrew, Golgotha, where they crucified him with 2 others, one on either side with Jesus in the middle. Pilate wrote out a notice and had it fixed on the cross, and it ran, Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews. Because the place where Jesus was crucified was not far from the city, and the writing was in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, so the Jewish chief priest said to Pilate,
You should not write, King of the Jews. But this man said, I am the King of the Jews.
Pilate answered,
What I have written is written.
When the soldiers had finished crucifying Jesus, they took his clothing and divided it into 4 shares, one for each soldier. His undergarment was seamless, woven in one piece from neck to hem. So they said to one another,
Instead of tearing it, let's throw dice to decide who is to have it.
In this way, the words of scripture was fulfilled. They shared out my clothing among them, and they cast lots for my clothes. This is exactly what the soldiers did. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala. Seeing his mother and the disciples, he loved standing near her. Jesus said to his mother,
Woman, behold your son.
Then to the disciples he said,
Behold your mother.
and from that moment, the disciples made a place for her in his home. After this, Jesus knew that everything had now been completed, and to fulfill the scriptures perfectly, he said,
I test.
A jar full of vinegar stood there. So putting a sponge soaked in vinegar on a hyssop stick, they held it up to his mouth. After Jesus had taken the vinegar, he said,
It is finished.
and bowing his head, he gave up the spirit.
Shall we kneel? Let us stand. Close the door.
It was preparation day,